Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Well, hello and welcome to the MuseCast. It is Christmas week, you guys. We've made it to Christmas 2020. So Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays. We are going to be so full of joy today. If you don't have joy, you can just borrow it from us because we're just going to lavish it upon you. I'm Shawna Boren. That gorgeous lady is Osheta Moore, and that handsome gentleman is Dan Kent. We're so glad that you're here with us today. Osheta and Dan, Christmas question for you. What's your favorite part about, and yes, even in 2020, in the midst of this lovely pandemic? It's not lovely, I'm kidding, but we're bringing joy, remember that. Right. In the midst of our reality, where we're choosing to have joy and we're choosing to express gratitude and thankfulness, what is your favorite thing about the Christmas season?
Go ahead, Dan.
And let's like focus it on this year. Like, not like, well, normally it's this, but this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. You know, I'm going to anticipate because we haven't actually gotten to Christmas yet. And so I think judging from how our Thanksgiving went, because Thanksgiving this year was way different than any other Thanksgiving that we've had. And Barbara and I are basically going to do the same thing for Christmas. And that is we're going to sit around and watch movies together and just the two of us. And that was so fun on Thanksgiving. And I'm really looking forward to that. We watched these old movies from like the 40s and 50s and stuff like that, and they're fun and they're just goofy because they're like they're so different in terms of like the culture and everything, but but there's the element of human nature that's the same, and it's fun.
All the time.
It's a good time.
I have to confess, last year, and I don't know why I did this, but I thought I'm going to show my kids Christmas Vacation because that was like growing up. That was a really funny movie and I really loved it. And it was one of those situations as a parent where you're like, I should have maybe screened this before. My gosh. Yeah. And at the end, my daughter, who was 11 at the time, she was still 11. She just glared at me and she's like, why would you make us sit through that? She was not pleased at all. She just found the whole thing vile and disgusting.
Wow.
So I know.
I watch that almost every year. It's still funny. It's still funny to me.
It cracks me up in just the most ridiculous way. So maybe you and Barb can enjoy that this year because we won't be watching it in our household again. How about you, Osheta?
What am I looking forward to this Christmas?
Yeah.
Every other Christmas has been so like first thing in the morning, Christmas centric for us. Like, wake up and come open presents, and then I spend hours cooking like a Christmas brunch situation, and then they eat and then they go sleep it off. But this year, because we've all just got really comfortable with like lazy mornings, we've already decided like we're just gonna all wake up like at 10, like take our time. And I'm a morning person, so that doesn't excite me, but I will make Christmas brunch while they're sleeping. They all come down because of the good smells. We're gonna eat and do presents kind of like gradually, like throughout the day, like a few at the brunch, maybe a few in the afternoon. Like we're just gonna like, and I'm excited about that. I feel like when they were little, there was so much like, it was so frantic of like, we gotta open the presents because they would like not leave us alone. Because they're now older, they're kind of like, and they all have kind of like a say in what they want to some extent. It's just more like slow family time, and I'm really looking forward to that.
That sounds amazing. Both of you guys have really good plans in place for the day. I'm very, very happy for you both.
Well, how about you? What do you got?
Yeah, what are you doing?
Yeah, well, so we do have a tradition of seeing a movie on either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. And we do try to do it Christmas Day. And that means like literally we were Rise of Skywalker, 6 a.m. like that year that it came out. So we're not going to the theater this year. However, Wonder Woman is being released on Christmas Day on a streaming platform, and we're gonna do the free trial so we can watch the movie. And I'm very excited for that. And I have been, honestly, in my prayer time and just in my quiet time in the morning of just trying to, listen to my body and, just kind of set my mind for the day, I've really been asking the Lord to show me places in my life that I can be joyful about, like that I could be genuinely joyful about. And this sound came to mind of the night before four of my kids. I only have four. All four of my kids were downstairs playing, I think, like the burrito game or something. And so it sounded like a WWE match a little bit. I don't know if you guys have played the burrito game. It's super fun. But anyway, so they're just giggling and laughing and then just, taking a break and talking. And I was upstairs, but I could hear all of this and it just warmed my soul. It's just like, they have been stuck together for 9 months and they are still choosing to, hang with one another and chat and laugh. And so that made me really, happy. And it really did spur joy within me. And I'm anticipating some moments like that on Christmas Day because it's just going to be the 6 of us and that's okay. And we're going to just make the most of it and be thankful for the fact that we're all together and we haven't, despised one another yet or walked out on one another. So yeah, just kind of looking forward to it. I think it'll be good.
Yeah. I'm really happy to hear that. That sounds so much fun.
Thank
I asked
you.
my kids last night if they wanted to see Wonder Woman, and they were ambivalent. And I was like, what have I done wrong with you?
What did you do wrong as a parent, Osheta?
No, we're a Marvel family, not a DC family.
I know.
I have learned that. And every time I say it, they're like, Mom.
You know this. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of 2 of my kids are hardcore Marvel, and then the other 2 lean more toward DC, but appreciate Marvel. So, yeah, we'll just make it work.
Raising little peacemakers, Shawna, raising peacemakers.
I'm trying, Osheta. All right, you guys. This weekend, Greg talked to us about the joy set before us. Yeah. And so it is our 3rd week in our Advent series, Illuminate. And Dan, we are so ready for your summary.
All right.
Lay it on us.
Hey, sounds good. Also, just a note, this is our 3rd one in the series. The 4th one is going to come at you fast. It's coming on Wednesday afternoon. So look for that on YouTube. And is it Wednesday or is it Thursday?
Thursday.
Yeah, okay.
Christmas Eve. Yeah.
So glad you're here. we had 1,000 people on YouTube on Wednesday. That's on Thursday.
Waiting.
Yeah. So Greg this week talked about joy, and even that phrase, for the joy set before you, is sort of what his idea was. Well, what does that mean exactly, especially in 2020 with all of the nastiness that we've experienced? And I'm not going to go through the laundry list of gross that we've all been in for the last year, but he says, how do you live in the joy in this type of year that we have? And he talked about how really all of the disciples, when they're writing about living in joy like this and about this joy, were also in really tough circumstances. In fact, even, the birth of Jesus takes place in a place where, we think of the problems that our government has, but their government was actually killing the firstborn of every child in the city. I mean, that's some pretty nasty. Can you imagine how macabre that would be? And you think that we're depressed because we can't sit at TGI Fridays to eat our meal. They're having their kids slaughtered. I mean, that's talk about a depressing environment. And yet within that, that's sort of where we have this great joy set before us. And so Greg talks about, well, what does that mean? How do we have that? How do we actually experience that? And he kind of highlights, how the disciples, they were flogged and they were mistreated and they were imprisoned, and yet they still were filled with joy. And so the question is, what is it that can fill a person with joy who's in that circumstance, and therefore can also fill a person who is in our circumstance with joy as well? And I think what it has to do with is that really the way that I like how Luke kind of kicks off the Christmas story, is this angel appears before Mary and Joseph, and they're terrified, it says, which I would be too. I'm just kind of sitting there. We're sitting on the couch. We're about to watch a Christmas movie. All of a sudden, blah, there's this angel appears, and the angel says, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. And so there's something about this news that this angel brings that is going to bring joy for all the people. And I think what that news is that there is more going on than meets the eye, because what meets the eye is that this world is full of suffering and evil and oppression, and the whole kind of sad parade ends in death. It just crashes, and it just seems there's this futility, and it's just so it can be very depressing. But what the angel says is that, no, God has become one of you to redeem his people, to free his people. And he brings good news that there's more going on than this. And so really the joy that is set before you, I think it really is that. It's set before you. We have to kind of walk into it. We have to get to it. We have to put ourselves into that. And I think that's a big part of what discipleship is not neglecting the world that we live in now, but living in the world we have now, also inside of this grander narrative that we believe is true. And that's the final thing I'll say on that, is that he says that it's good news that will bring this joy, which, it's obviously good because we're promised eternal life. We're promised that God will wipe away every tear, but it's also news, which means that it's also true. And so we have to believe that it's not just a story that we tell ourselves to make us feel better. No, it's actually true. We couldn't have joy in our circumstances if this grander narrative wasn't also true. And so I think that's sort of the gist of what Greg was getting at, is the more we can live into the truth of that good news, the more that we will have this sort of foundation of joy, because no matter what we experience, we might be suffering, we might be miserable, we might have great grief, but along with those things, I mean, Paul's getting flogged when he has this joy.
Right, right.
It's not like he's pretending to be happy because we're supposed to be happy. Rather, it's whatever you experience, you also have this ever-present joy in your experience. And I think discipleship is largely about living into that and making that more real in our hearts.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, I really was drawn to the part of Greg's message when he started to drill it on the good news, like drill down into that a little bit and what that means for us. And the way he phrased it, he asked us the question, like, well, what do we do with the grace and the love that we've received because we've benefited from this good news and we've received this grace and we've received this love. So what is it that we do with that? And that was a real poignant moment for me, because I think you guys know this, I love being challenged to really embrace the scripture and live it out in everyday life. I think it's so vital and so important. And so at the end, Greg was really just encouraging, saying, whatever you've done for the sake of love, that's eternal. Like, that doesn't dissipate, that doesn't disappear. And when he said, you are far more significant than you realize, I think this good news, it sets us free, but then it also spurs us to action to bring that good news to others. And that was just really beautiful and powerful. And I really appreciated that. And it kind of makes me think, and circling to something that Osheta was saying earlier before we went live, about the good news that the shepherds heard. It's not just for us, right? So it's like this proclamation that we get to like speak forth, and then it spreads to others. And so when the shepherds heard this good news, and that spurred them to action, and they had a mission that they were about. So I don't know, Osheta, do you want to kind of dive into that a little more after you turn your mic on? Dan, I blame you for that.
Well, honestly, my kids are making lunch while you guys are talking, and I was like, that's good Zoom etiquette. It's not my mic's on. Yeah, I think that, so when we look at the Christmas story, if we follow like the Luke narrative, then the shepherds were the very first ones that the angels came to proclaim that Jesus had been born. And there is something about the shepherds being the ones who received that first, and then their significance is massive in the story, because they're the ones that now go and tell others. And so it's almost this reminder that even when we feel beaten down by this world, even when we feel rejected, even when we feel marginalized and outcast, like what Greg said, you don't know your significance. Like the good news will come to you. And part of us actually embracing joy is maybe partnering with God and telling good news to others, telling others like, this is what the Lord has shown me and done in my life. And maybe I know I'm going through a lot, but remembering the way the Lord showed up for me in this time or that time and telling it to others, I think that can bring up joy. I don't know the brain science behind it, Dan, but I feel like there's something about gratitude and remembering and how that that helps to kind of live into some of the what we would consider as joy or contentment or moving through that pain and anxiety. But I think that there's something about the shepherds being the ones that got it that I feel like a lot of us can relate to. Gosh, I feel like we're just trying to make it. So
yeah. It wasn't the Pharisees. It wasn't the other religious leaders of the time. It wasn't the highfalutin. It was the workers. It was the outcast. It was the marginalized. It was those who were just going about trying to do their part to survive and make a living. And they got the good news. And then they had mission to go and share.
This is why in our nativity, we don't have the wise men yet, because the wise men are they were rulers and they were people of authority from where they were. And it's nope, the nativity scene on Christmas is all about the upside down kingdom of those who didn't think that they had significance are now living into these significant spaces. And so
that's good.
Yeah. Do you think, Dan, like Osheta said, because she said she doesn't know the brain science behind it, and you've done a lot of work in the area of dealing with people in depression and just high anxiety and stuff. Do you think that we're off our rocker to say expressing joy, feeling joy, cultivating that within you can help shift some of those neurons and things in your brain?
Yeah, I do in some senses. I think that what I found is that if you're just trying to be happy for the sake of being happy, if you're just trying to have positive thinking, no, I don't think that works.
Yeah.
In fact, I think that a lot of times that can make it worse. I think that you have to live in truth. I think you have to live in reality. And so I think you have two kind of mistakes that I see being made on this topic. On one hand, you have people who are just turn that frown upside down, be positive, be positive, be positive. And even if you get good at that, you end up living in this superficiality and disconnected from reality. And that can be very vacuous and that can lead to other problems down the road. And then the other hand, you have people who tend to overdiagnose things as being problematic. They'll say things like you have depression as if this a problem with your brain. And I would say for some people that's true, but for a lot of people, I think that if you are experiencing depression, a lot of times it's an indicator that your brain is working right. Look at the world that we're in right now and look at all of the stuff that's happening. And even if things are going okay for you, it's not going okay for your brothers and sisters around you.
Right.
And we are made to be in relationship with those people, and we are built for community. And what happens to our brothers and sisters affects our spirits. And so, for a lot of people, if you are depressed, I think that's an indicator that, your brain is working right. And so I think what God is calling us into is a joy that's based on a reality, not to neglect the bad parts of our reality, but that to live into this truth along with this bad truth. And that's why the Apostle Paul even says, whatever is pure, whatever is noble, whatever is good, dwell on those things. If it is good, if it is pure, if it is noble, then dwell on it. Don't just be positive for the sake of being positive, only if there is those really good things. And the fact is I think that there are a lot of good things. The world is full of God's blessings, and we just have to, as we assess and as we live, to incorporate those into our spirit as well.
So I have two things in response to what you just shared. Thank you so much. One is, I think maybe I'm just goofy enough to think, I know that especially this year when I've tried to cultivate a spirit of gratitude in my life, We've talked about that, like, and even with our family, we have a morning meeting. I'm like, well, tell me something you're grateful for, because I feel like when you do that in a habitual pattern, then you are choosing to focus on the blessing. You're choosing to focus on the good, and you're taking your eyesight off of the negative. So in that respect, I do think it can help. I agree with you. Like, you can't just be like, turn that frown upside down. I might punch you in your face if you said that to me, in love, of course. But I do think there's something to fixing your eyes on the good, fixing your eyes on the light versus focusing on the bad and the darkness. So
yeah,
that's just, I don't know,
good.
something I was
you guys have them every morning. You have like a little morning time with your family.
Mm-hmm.
That is the coolest thing. Oh,
Yeah.
I wish I grew up in in your family. That's awesome.
Come on over. You can be the uncle. We'll let you in. The other thing, sorry, Osheta, just one really quickly.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
When you talked about you brought up community, which that is my jam. I love it. It reminded me of this little figurine statue that my parents had when I was growing up, and it said, "Let our lives be so intertwined that when one sheds tears, the other tastes salt." So just like, that's what I thought of when you shared that. Like, you may be doing okay, but your brothers and your sisters, your neighbor, someone isn't doing okay, and we should hurt for them and want to help in some way and help be the light. Whatever it is that we're okay with, we should maybe want to share that with others. Yeah. So those were my thoughts from what you shared, Dan. Go ahead, Osheta. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I'm glad you interrupted me, because I think maybe this response might be better for the question we got from a viewer.
Oh, yes. Good job. Yes.
So why don't you ask this question, and then I'll tell you what I was thinking. And if it doesn't work, then it's just a free thought from Osheta. But
we'll weave it in. That's what we do. We weave it in. Well, no, but like, this discussion leads beautifully into the question that we got emailed in. So thank you for emailing in this question to our MuseCast crew. It's a great question, and we were really excited when we saw it, and we knew that we wanted to talk about it. But this person just says, I understand finding joy when my suffering is for Christ, or when the suffering is because of following Jesus. But what about finding the joy in non-persecution type suffering? So just when the world is yucky, you're living in a pandemic, or you have a broken relationship, or, a sickness, or, you've lost your job because of, the economy or whatever. Like, what if, like, in these real life moments, how can you find joy there? Because they understand it in regards to the kingdom perspective of following Jesus. But what about, how does that translate into just everyday life when we're dealing with the reality that we live in a fallen world and stuff happens that's not always designed by God in our lives?
Yeah. Well, then I'll say what I'm going to say. So you said something, Shawna, that made me think, or was it Dan? The joy set before Jesus. And I think that at the core of, for me, when I feel my least joyful, which also means I feel my most anxious or overwhelmed, is when I have this sense that I'm doing all of this alone, or that nobody gets it, or that it falls on me to make it right, or fix it, or I'm out of options. There's like this hopeless place that I get to when it's hard for me to access joy, and it almost always boils down to I'm alone, or I'm doing this on my own. And I think that there is something about, and this is why the Christmas story is so meaningful to me, and that Jesus came in the form of a little, like, vulnerable baby in, like, an outcast family, like, is that Jesus gets it. So, like, for every hard thing that we've gone through, not just Jesus gets, like, massive, horrific, torture at the hands of the empire, like, and Jesus gets persecution at that level, but Jesus just gets how hard it is to be human. And I think that was maybe even, I would imagine, part of the good news for the shepherds, to be like, oh, this baby that, like, we can access, like like he gets it, like he's like us. And so I think that, how do we do it? I think the answer always goes back to me is when somebody asks me that, I ask them like, well, what are your spiritual practices? Like, how are you connecting to Jesus, and how are you cultivating spaces where you can reflect on the person and the character of Jesus, and who he is, and how he is, and allowing the Spirit to bring you to those spaces where you remember, like, do you have a time where you pray? Do you have a time where you walk? Like, what are your spiritual practices? And let's like dive into the hundreds of amazing spiritual practices that have been practiced, by Christians for thousands of years, and find some way for you to cultivate space to connect with Jesus so you don't feel so alone. So that's usually where I go, because I don't think choosing joy is a one size fits all prescription. I think it's more of a description of the life of a kingdom person.
That was lovely, Osheta. Thank you. And so helpful. I think spiritual practices are, yes, we need to dive into that and just see what is it that we are utilizing. I had some similar thoughts too. One, when I read the question, I initially was just like, of course, I can relate to that. One of my most favorite series that we've done at Woodland Hills, and this was years ago, was a series called Crap Happens. And it was all about, remember that? It was a series all about the way in which God shows up during just the crappiness of everyday life, big things, small things, everyday nuisances to like really tragic things, just the fact that God consistently shows up. So that came to mind, and that came to mind, coupled with this thought that I had on Sunday morning as I was driving in, of God pursuing us. Like when he came as man, when he came as a baby into the circumstances that he did, that was him pursuing us, pursuing relationship with us, pursuing a way to reconcile us to the Father. And he's always doing that. So if in your sickness, he's pursuing you and he is there. In your stress and anxiety, he is pursuing you and he is there. If you've lost a job or in the brink of losing your home, or you have a broken relationship, like God is after your heart in that moment so that he can be all that he needs to be for you in that moment. He is not afraid or ashamed of our feelings and our emotions and our anxieties. Like he enters into those things. And I know that's not like a check this off the list and do A, B, and C, and you'll be good and you'll have joy. But at least in my life, has really helped me to know, whatever it is that's happening externally is really crappy. But internally, I know that God is for me, that he is with me, that he pursues me and he loves me. And he is not going to leave me to deal with this on my own. So he's shown himself to be faithful in that way. And then the other thought I had was just that point that Greg made about joy not equating happiness. Like happiness is very circumstantial. And I think that's where, like what Dan said, like that's where you could say, turn that frown upside down. And that's not exactly what we're talking about. Where you can have true kingdom joy in the midst of everyday chaos, because that's not our focus. It's that, like Dan was saying earlier, that joy set before us. You can have kingdom joy because it's coming from a different place, not coming from a situation or circumstances. But ultimately, I just want to say my heart goes out to the person who sent this in, because we get it. Like we get it. Go ahead, Osheta.
Well, I was
we
just
haven't forgotten
say,
you, Dan.
No,
okay,
Dan,
that's fine.
I just want to say, and this may not be a long-term solution, but like for me, sometimes I've had to, instead of saying I'm choosing joy or I need to have joy, like swapping the word contentment out. Like I am content. Like I'm going to find contentment, or because for me, and living in like the super Western, like qualifying and like hyper, like it's like, well, joy can feel like unreasonable, or like I have to like work my way into it, like Dan was talking about. But I think if I think of it like I'm content, like I know who I am, I know who I belong to, I know Jesus, like I'm just content, like whatever happens. So that has been a helpful way for me in the times where I'm like, where joy feels like, so maybe even offensive, like, can I ease into contentment? And usually when I do that, it takes the pressure off. And then I begin to like explore joy and what that looks like for me. So that's just one practical thing I do.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's a great point.
I think I'm probably going to end up in a similar spot in how I think about it, but there's something about happiness that's so like you said, Shawna, it's very circumstantial. And when you live in a circumstantial way like that, then you become dependent on a good situation in order for you to have any semblance of joy. And what Jesus is calling us to is something that's much more pervasive than that. It's not contingent on that. And so one of the things I would say is that I think that we have to learn to not hook our spiritual state to our circumstance. We have to unhook that and hook it to the reality of God's love and all of that, the stuff that we teach at Woodland Hills. And something that really helped me is in the movie, well, I won't say the movie because the line gives it away, but it's a movie with Jack Nicholson, and he goes to the psychiatrist's office, and he's in the waiting room, and there's all these people in the waiting room, and they're all so depressed, and they're all they look so glum, and he looks at them, and they all look up at him, and he says, "What if this is as good as it gets?" And that's what the movie's called, As Good as It Gets.
Yep, As Good as It Gets. It's one of my favorites.
I tell you, it's such an important question, because it's like, what if your life is not going to be better than it is right now in this moment? Every moment from here on out is going to get less and less good. Can you still have joy? And if your answer to that is no, then that means you are hooking your spiritual contentment to your circumstance, and you are going to be blown and tossed around with every wind like that. And so the trick is to grow into this grander narrative. One of the ways that I like to think of that is, and might be kind of far-fetched at first, but I'm telling you, I think there's something to it. I realized this when I was watching TV, how, like, I know I'm a grown adult, okay? I know that it's just a TV. I know they're just actors, all right? But gosh darn it, when the guy, apologizes to the woman or whatever, and there's this big emotional scene, I get all weepy. It's like, this is not real, and yet it's causing these very real emotions. And so there's like this disconnect, but I'm safe. Even if in the movie there's all this horrible stuff that's happening, I know that I'm secure. I know that I'm like safe. And I think that there's something true about that in real life as well. We are secured in God's love. We are promised that God will redeem us. We are promised that God will be with us, will wipe away every tear, and that we will be with God in heaven for all eternity. If we believe that, then none of the stuff that we experience in this life can really truly hurt us. It can hurt us, but it can't wreck us. It can't destroy us. And so one of the ways that I kind of try to cultivate this feeling of joy, regardless of circumstance, is to think of reality like a movie. Like, this is a scene that I'm in.
Yeah.
And now that can be dangerous, because you can become apathetic to your situation. You don't want to do that.
Right.
You want to maintain that authenticity, but just realize that in the same way, when you watch a movie, there's a part of you that nothing can wreck. And the same thing, no matter how bad your circumstances are, even the Apostle Paul being flogged and martyred, the world can't destroy that part that God will redeem and that God loves. And and that, living as if that's true, that means that what I'm seeing is just a small part of the picture, and I understand that there's this bigger picture, and so I can have this experience that transcends this immediate circumstance, because I'm in touch with the reality that transcends this immediate circumstance. And I think that's kind of another way of saying what Osheta was saying. But
absolutely,
yeah,
good job. Okay, high five, Dan.
All right.
High five, Osheta.
Hold on. Let me go to gallery view. Okay.
Yeah. Do it.
Okay.
Okay.
There we go.
Just go. So like.
All right. We're not going to use the reactions. We're physically going to high five one another. All right, you guys, we spent this whole episode talking about joy. And so in like 15 seconds, I would love for each of you to just define what we mean when we say joy, because this could be that could be a real roadblock for some people if they're thinking Pollyanna happiness. And we're like, nope, that's not what we're talking about. So let's just, to make it very clear, bottom line it for everyone, 15 seconds each. When we say joy, what is it that you mean? Daniel, go first, and then Osheta.
I think that joy is simply living as if the good news is true. Joy is what experiencing good news is.
Mm-hmm. Good job. I like it.
I think joy is contentment in our belovedness and knowing that we are not alone.
Yes. Amen. What they said. That's what I say. I say what they said.
That's cheating. That's totally cheating.
Hey, we got to move on. So sorry. Time is of the essence. So I really like what you guys said.
Wait, hold up. I think Dan and I both went 5 seconds. So I think that you.
Yeah.
I can't beat that. Yeah. When I talk about joy, kingdom joy, for me, it is like understanding whose I am and living that out regardless of my circumstances, like living out that truth, that love, that grace, regardless of what is happening around me. So yeah, that's what I mean by joy.
That's good.
Thanks,
you
Shawna.
guys.
That's
Merry Christmas to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Have a lovely, lovely week. Let God just bask you over you with his light and his love and his goodness this week. We really want that for you so much. And we're going to close it out with a prayer that actually some of our community did a video to that you saw at the beginning of the service. So we're going to close out with that, and we hope you're blessed by it. So here we go. Oh Lord, you are truly the star that rises out of Jacob and the scepter that rises out of Israel. In a new star, you showed yourself as God. And lying in the manger, you showed yourself as God and man. So we confess you to be the one Christ. In your great mercy, grant us the grace of seeing you and show us the brightness of your light, that all the darkness of this present world may be driven away. Even as we long to see you, refresh us with the joy of seeing you in your holy word. Amen. That is our prayer for you guys, that you would just bask in his light and in his love. We are so appreciative of you all. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for sending in questions. Have a Merry Christmas, and we will see you next time. Be blessed, everyone.
Bye.